Hey everyone. So have you guys noticed like all these companies releasing remakes of old games lately? It's kind of wild, right? I
Mm.
mean, every time I look for something new to play, it seems like bam, another blast from the past. And don't get me wrong, I love revisiting the classics, but it does make you wonder like what's with all the remakes?
Yeah, it's definitely been a trend.
We were looking into this whole thing and we found a bunch of articles and stuff about game remakes. And well, we want to try to figure out like what's the deal? Is it just a cash grab or is there something more to it?
So the Cinelinx article, it jumps right into something that honestly surprised me. The history of re-releasing games, it goes way back. Like, we're not just talking about some recent trend. This has been going on for decades. They brought up Super Mario All-Stars for the Super Nintendo, which, if you remember, that was huge at the time, taking all those classic Mario games, giving them a fresh coat of paint for a new generation, and don't even get me started on Mega Man, Tetris, and Street Fighter 2. How many times have those been re-released? Seriously, it's gonna be like, what, dozens of times at this point?
It really highlights how cyclical the gaming industry is, you know? Nostalgia is a powerful thing, especially when you combine it with new technology. We want those comfort food classics, but with a shiny new presentation. And these re-releases, it's not just about tugging at our heartstrings, they're also a smart business move. That steady income from familiar titles that often fuels the development of the next big thing, you know?
So those remasters that some people turn their noses at, those could actually be paving the way for the future of gaming. Kind of ironic when you think about it.
It's like Hollywood, right? Churning out those superhero reboots and sequels. It's all about funding the bigger, riskier projects.
Totally. But speaking of taking creative risks, I think we need to break down the different types of re-releases.
Yeah, Nasu actually does a great job of that in their video.
Because honestly, the lines can get so blurry.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes a remaster is barely more than a simple port, you know?
Yeah.
And then you have remakes that are practically brand new games.
Why do you even draw the line?
So at the most basic level, you have ports. That's literally just taking the original game code, making it work on the new hardware. Think of it as a straight-up transfer, maybe with a few tiny changes for compatibility.
Right.
Like The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess, going from GameCube to Wii.
Right.
Same game, different console.
Exactly.
Then you step it up with the remasters.
Yeah.
These are more like, you know, giving the game a makeover, enhanced graphics, maybe some quality of life stuff, faster loading times, things like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes even some extra content thrown in. Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered for the PS5 is a good example of that.
Oh, for sure.
And then you reach the big leagues, the full-blown remake.
Here we go.
These are built totally from scratch.
Wow.
New game engine, new assets. They might even make big changes to the gameplay or the story.
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII Remake has to be the biggest example of that, right? I mean, they took a total classic, completely modernized it, gorgeous graphics, more story, whole new combat system.
And they weren't afraid to stir up some controversy either. That's actually what Nasu uses as a case study, which I thought was super interesting. They went back and played the original and the remake back to back. Analyzed all the good stuff, the bad stuff, the really weird choices.
What a way to experience how much games have changed, right? So what stood out to you from Nasu's analysis? I mean, visually it's stunning, right? And they really dove deep into the lore. The wall market section, forget about it. Pure fan service. But I get why some people weren't thrilled. Like Nasu mentioned the pacing, how it felt a lot more linear than the original. And then there's Sephiroth. He's everywhere. It's like they were scared to let him be that mysterious figure he was in the original.
Yeah, it's a tough balance, you know, trying to please those hardcore fans who have such strong memories of the game, but also making it fresh and exciting for newcomers who are experiencing it for the first time. And sometimes that leads to some really interesting decisions like those plot ghosts that Nasu was talking about. It's almost like the developers are winking at the audience, acknowledging that pressure to stay true to the original.
Right. It's like they're commenting on the whole idea of remakes. Which brings up another question. Why even bother revisiting these games? Some people say the originals were better, that you can't recreate those memories.
It's a valid question. But I think, for one, there's the historical aspect. These games are part of gaming history, and remakes let us share them with a whole new audience.
People who maybe weren't around for the pixelated graphics and, the sometimes wonky controls.
Exactly. It's like introducing a new generation to something you loved growing up.
It's true.
And a good remake, it can be more than just a nostalgia trip. It can be a way to breathe new life into a game. Use modern tech and design to really make it shine.
Like imagine Final Fantasy VII with the graphics of, say, Horizon Forbidden West, or the combat system from Ghost of Tsushima.
See? Now we're talking. That's where it gets really exciting. when developers use remakes to push boundaries and reimagine what a game can be.
Right.
But on the other hand, we can't forget about the potential downsides. Not all remakes are made equal, right? Some companies, they're just looking for a quick cash grab. They don't care about the legacy of the game.
So how do we avoid those? How do we make sure we're supporting the good remakes?
Do your research, read reviews, watch gameplay videos. Don't be afraid to be critical. Ask yourself, is this a cheap imitation or a genuine reimagining?
That's great advice.
You know, it makes you wonder, with all the tech we have today, what will remakes look like in the future?
Oh, wow. Yes.
Will we see even crazier reinterpretations?
Yeah.
Or will developers go back to those really faithful adaptations?
Who knows?
Only time will tell. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive for today. But before we go, here's a little something to think about. Imagine your favorite game of all time. What if it got a really well-made, thoughtful remake? Would you fall in love with it all over again? Could even be the thing that finally gets you that sequel you've been waiting for. Something to think about, right? Until next time.